don't write what I'm speaking, but I speak what I feel. But I think we're in difficult times, and I'm afraid I might not say things that has to be said here in Germany. So I choose to write and to read. I'm a bit dyslexic, so I print it very big. So I hope that I'll be able to deliver what I feel. But it's not easy in these times to do events. So I will start. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Slavoj. When I thought about how to open an event in such a dark moment in humanity, I asked myself, what can I possibly say? And here I am introducing a friend, a comrade, my teacher, our trickster, the philosopher Slavoj Zizek. And there are so many questions I would like to ask him about Lacan, about Hegel, even about the obscene jokes he tells us times and again. But my heart didn't go there. My heart is beating all the time and here and shouting, Gaza, Gaza, Gaza. Gaza is burning. Gaza is burning right now. And the government of the West remained silent. The Palestinian people are being slaughtered live on screen, and life goes on as usual, or almost usual. That maybe it's a bit different, but it is kind of the same. So I didn't know how to open this discussion, because I think it is important also to go to the base and to enjoy when we have people that I believe have wisdom and have something to share with us. So I chose to start with the first book of Plato's Republic. I thought if Zizek is the last philosopher in a way, and if Germany is maybe the last republic of the West, then perhaps it makes sense to start with the Republic. Or Benjamin taught us that if we go to the beginning, we might do maybe not redemption, but a tikkun, a repair. So I went to the Republic, and what did I find there? Thrasymachus bursting into the dialogue with two simple, brutal statements that still haunt us till this day. First, he said, justice is whatever the strong say it justice. Justice is whatever power dares to call justice. And second, when Socrates tried to prove that justice is universal, that it has no connection to power, Thrasymachus replied, but my dear Socrates, how will you convince us if we refuse to listen? How you can convince us if we insist to refuse to listen? And here we are today with the same two statements that coming against us. For years, we thought to unmask the West. We showed how liberal democracy is fake with only a mask to promote endless exploitation. We show how Zionism wore the mask of emancipation, while in truth it was, and mostly it is now, settler colonialism. But now the masks are gone. We revealed the face of the monster. We succeed, and yet the people fall in love with the monster. Power no longer needs justification. We don't have to hide behind liberal democracy in order to do exploitation. We don't need the mask of Zionism in order to create a genocide. Power is function for itself with its own might. And if you speak truth to power, you are cast outside the law, silenced, imprisoned, maybe even killed, and even worse, they can shut down your TV program. This is the world as it stands, unapologetic, merciless, capricious. And the more carefully we craft our arguments, the more they refuse to hear us. And here I'm standing in Berlin, and I ask, how can Germany justify being complicit in genocide when the entire new mythology was built on the word never again? And when they said never again, all I hear all the time is always again, like the ribbon from Alan Poe that said never more. I hear always more, and nobody stop. Like, so Slavoj just showed me that the Chancellor was crying on the victims of the Holocaust with tears 80 years ago. Don't cry on my grandparents that you murdered and be indifferent or support the murder that happened right now in front of our eyes. So then I look back at the land I came from, at the language I love so deeply, and I see the language it's giving orders of death. Orders of genocide are given in Hebrew. And I miss the Yiddish. I miss the Yiddish I never knew. But why do I had to deal with my identity at all? My Jewish identity now, it's built from words like exile and anti-Semitism, Zionism, genocide. Once genocide in past tense, in the past, now genocide in active when Israeli Jewish soldiers are committing it. So why not to flee like Jonah, running away from the call of the Father? Why not sail in the ocean of universality? Let's be honest, to resist genocide in Gaza, one doesn't need to be Palestinian nor Jewish. One only needs to be a human in order to resist the genocide in Gaza. We have to be human to resist the genocide in Gaza. We don't have to be radical or Marxist or anything else. We can be just a petit bourgeois in a suburb of Berlin to say no to genocide. I thought on St. Paul they said no man, no woman, no slave, no master, no Jew, no Greek. We all one in the voice against genocide. I thought also on Shakespeare when he said a rose by any other names would smell as sweet to said, why do I need my identity? And yet a paragraph of Gertrude Stein hit me and I thought, yet a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. When I stand here on German soil, seeing the names of Jews engraved in the stones behind my feet, knowing that most of my family was murdered by the Germans, on the altar of racial supremacy. And here it was the Ari supremacy, and there it's white supremacy, and back home it's Jewish supremacy. And I choose to stand here as a Jew, demanding of you to interfere, to help save our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Because if the name of the Jew was the name of universality, now it is the name Palestine. Palestine stands for universality. And this is why I'm wearing it, because the only way I can perform my Jewishness is with full solidarity with Palestine. I remember when I was living there, I heard kind of Derrida voice whispering, even when you're in Jerusalem, you long toward Jerusalem. You know always the Messiah to come. And now, having chosen exile, I am still longing for exile. Not exiled enough yet. Therefore, I look back at what I used to call home. And like Lot's wife, you know the story of Lot's wife, that she looked back to Sodom and Gomorrah and became a pillar of salt. That's how I look back at my home, and what I see is Sodom and Gomorrah built by Zionism between the river and the sea. I see the Nakba of 1948. I see the genocide of 2024-25. And I know both of them are the Nakba of the Palestinian people. Both of them staring straight into my eyes. And here I stand frozen, turning like Lot's wife into a pillar of salt. Looking in despair to my friend here, Zizek, and I ask him, Quo Vadimus, where the hell are we going? How do we stop this eruption of global evil? For here, Hannah Arendt's banality of evil is no longer enough, because power now celebrates itself. Before they used to say we didn't know. Now nobody in Tel Aviv or in Berlin or in New York cannot say, or Washington said we didn't know. We see it every day. We know, and we see people celebrating the evil. We see how Israel is showing themselves the things that the Nazis tried to hide when they did it. And it's hard because I came from there. And it's hard because Hebrew is my only language. And like that, because power now celebrates itself in a carnivalistic way, in Jewish son of evil itself, maybe I thought like the obscene spectacle that Pasolini exposed in Salo, if you remember it. The perversion celebration of domination. And we see it everywhere in all the Trump energy around, the increase of celebration of the right wing here, and celebration of perversion. So perhaps my question to the last philosopher is that, can we still imagine a world beyond both the banality of evil and the obscene Jewish sound of power? Thank you, and free Palestine.
My answer to his last question, no, we cannot imagine it, and it's good that we cannot imagine it. Because today, this imagining a different future is the ultimate trap, I think. I saw recently a movie about German resistance against Hitler, where an English compromise guy said, but we must negotiate, we must keep the hope alive. And a German, very progressive German, fighting against the fascists, says, no, hope is for those who are hoping, waiting for another guy to do their work. Lose hope and start doing it. So let me begin with a wisdom of, you may find this funny, of Otto von Bismarck, whom I appreciate very much. He said, stupidity is a gift from God, but it should not be abused. I totally agree. I clearly remember how I abused it in a curious incident which happened to me a couple of decades ago. I was sitting at a table with a friend of mine who boasted that he is really good at telling the future from inspecting the curves on a palm. I laughed at his boasting and couldn't decide if he is just lying or if he sincerely believes in his supernatural ability. He interrupted my laughter with an offer. Why don't you let me inspect your palm and tell you your future? I vociferously objected to it. Absolutely no. I don't believe in such nonsense. But my friend instantly fired back with a quite logical reply. If you know it's nonsense, why then do you resist so forcefully to do it? What are you afraid of? I forgot, or more probably repressed my reaction. I just remember I didn't allow my friend to do it. The underlying structure is, of course, that of disavowal, Verleugnung. I know very well that it is all nonsense, but I still don't want to take the risk and test it. However, it is here used the structure of this avowal, with a slightly different spin. Something like, I believe it, but I don't want it empirically tested and proven or disproven. For example, the true problem of the Turin shroud with the alleged photographic imprint of Christ resides in the potentially catastrophic consequences for the Church itself if the tests will indicate that the shroud is authentic from Christ's time and place. Why? Because if the shroud is authentic, then there are traces of Christ's blood on it, and some biochemists are already working on its DNA. So what will this DNA say about Christ's father? Not to mention the prospect of cloning Christ. Kierkegaard knew this very well when he emphasized that an authentic Christian believer does not try to demonstrate the factual truth of his, her, their, its belief. Making a belief dependent on empirical proof is in itself a negation of belief. In today's politics and the ideology that grounds it, we find all too often a similar logic. When Israel, as they say, the only democracy in the Middle East, justifies its measures in religious fundamentalist terms, God gave us full right over the entire great Israel, we are dealing here neither with an actual belief nor with a mere cynical manipulation. Their belief say that Palestinians are direct successors of the biblical Amaleks is quite literally beyond factual truth. Not even to mention Trump, as well as his spiritual colleague Putin, who are regularly doing the same. As Bismarck would have put it, they all serially abuse their stupidity, especially when they think they are acting in a cunning way. So what would a proper use of stupidity be? To remain faithful to one's just cause, even when a pragmatic realist view tells you that your situation is hopeless. I think Palestinians in Gaza are stupid to insist, to persist, to stay there. In this basic sense, there is something stupid in every serious decision. You ignore the complexity of a situation and reduce it to a simple choice, yes or no. So let me follow the stupidities of what goes on in the Middle East more in detail. I will focus on the immanent antagonisms of the Israeli ideology and practice, although I am well aware that this can also be read in a racist way, as if Palestinians are just objects and the key process is taking place in the inner struggle of the Jews. So let me begin by, it came to me spontaneously, a reaction to so-called Liebestod on piano that we just heard from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde. I am a Wagnerian fanatic. Yes, Wagner was an incredibly dirty, racist person, but you know that the first mystery, and he was aware of it, almost all his heroes, he says this, are figures of a wandering Jew. Vliegen de Hollander is a wandering Jew, Amfortas is a wandering Jew, a person with a strange wound which prevents him to die. So all their desire is to die in peace. And the point I want to make here, and this is now the proper part of my talk I am approaching, is that, again, in the honor of Daniel Barenboim, I want to mention a staging of Tristan in Bayreuth, 1982, repeated 83, directed, staged by Jean-Pierre Ponel. It's one of my shocking experiences. You know what they did? I hope you know the story. In Act 3, Isolde doesn't really come. Tristan is dying, desperate, but he is not able to confront the void, to die alone. So he imagines, as a vision, we see her appearing behind him, Isolde, singing her Liebestod, all brightly with under light, vividly presented. And then, when her singing ends, the stage is for 2-3 seconds in darkness. When lights come again, we see a totally different picture. Everything is darkness. Tristan is there alone, dead. No Isolde. She stayed happily with her husband. It was just an adventure for her. Why am I mentioning this? Because I think maybe something similar, I see a danger, will happen, is happening with the Palestinians in Gaza and on the West Bank. They may be caught in the hopeful dream of there are Western liberals, whoever, who sympathize with them, but at the end, they will remain alone. Let's not allow this. Now, a little bit of theory. What Ponel did is he took a well-known story and turned it around. The music is the same, just the denouement at the end totally changes its meaning. It's not really a Liebestod, it's a desperate vision that allows the hero to die in peace. And this is what I like also in detective novels or movies, when they end with multiple denouements. You know, first everything is explained, you see who is a murderer and so on. Then we learn that the true murderer is another person who just planted some false evidence to cover his trace and put the blame on another suspect and so on. I think that in today's politics, we find numerous cases of a similar reversal. Let me again take now the case of Israel in the ongoing Middle East war. The first story was that out of nowhere, Hamas attacked an Israeli kibbutz near the Israeli border and a big raving event nearby, killing hundreds and taking hostages and so on. We know the story. Now we know that although the Hamas incursion is responsible for serious crimes, the story is much more complex. There are multiple indications that Israel not only knew about the attack in advance, as we know, it was informed by the Egyptian and American secret services, as well as by its own spying apparatus. What went on in Gaza was covered by all possible satellite and digital surveillance, plus thousands of spies among the Israeli spies, among the Palestinians. On the top of it, IDF moved a division protecting the area to the West Bank just 2 weeks before October 7th, so Israel clearly wanted to use the attack as an excuse for a wider war. Before you accuse me here of paranoia, let me quote a guy to whom I'm opposed, but 99%, not 100%, Charlie Kirk, you know, the guy. You know what he said? He said on October 12th already in an interview, He said that, quote, Mr. Netanyahu allowed Hamas to attack his own country as part of a desperate plan to remain in power. Plus, it is proven that in the years before 2023, Israel was amply financing Hamas through Qatar, although it was aware of Hamas's military activity. The idea was to keep the Palestinians in Gaza politically separated from the Palestinians on the West Bank, and thus lessen the pressure on Israel to allow a two-state solution. Far right, now Minister Bezalel Smotrich, said so himself back in 2015. And according to various reports, Netanyahu made a similar point at a Likud faction meeting in early 2019, when he was quoted as saying that those who oppose a Palestinian state should support the transfer of funds to Gaza, because maintaining the separation between the Palestinian Authority and the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza would prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. Another clear point to me. After the bombardment of Gaza began, many critics of Israel missed the point when they claimed Israel is failing to achieve its goal to destroy Hamas. They are just killing Palestinians and ruining Gaza. Now we hear the same rumor when Israel is making the final military offensive against Gaza. But Hamas will find a way to escape. I don't know how, at least the leading Hamas members. It's only the Gazans that will be killed. My interpretation here is very simple. But that's what Israel wants. Objectively, Hamas works for Israel in this sense. It's used as an excuse for Israel. And I know what will come after. After Gaza, they will say what they already said. Now Hamas is moving onto the West Bank to do the same, and so on and so on. The wave of recent announcements of some big Western European countries that they will soon recognize the Palestinian state is marked by a similar ambivalence, I think. It appears as a step in the right direction, clearly limiting Israel's ambitions. However, at the same time, there is a negation included in it. It does what it does in order to avoid doing what really needs to be done in order to stop the genocidal activity of Israel. As Gideon Levy put it succinctly, the recognition of Palestine is a gift to Israel. Quote, international recognition of a Palestinian state rewards Israel, which should be thanking each and every country doing so, since such recognition serves as a misleading alternative to what must actually be done, imposing sanctions, end of quote. To put it brutally, if we limit ourselves just to recognize Palestine, there will soon be no Palestinian territory to be recognized as a state. If there will be some kind of peace, it will be the peace Trump and Netanyahu want to impose on Gaza, by way of totally destroying it. Or as Tacitus, the ancient Roman poet, put it 2,000 years ago, they make a desolation and they call it peace. Now, I come to the crucial point. The stain on the Zionist project, the link between anti-Semites and Zionists, was here from the very beginning. Problems with Israel didn't begin after the 1967 war, in which Israel occupied the West Bank, and not even in 1948, when the State of Israel was recognized by the United Nations. The so-called Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government in 1923, I think, announcing its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. But the same Balfour, the protector of the Jews, presided over the passage of the 1905 Aliens Act, the main object of which was to limit the entry into Britain of Jews from Eastern Europe. You know, Russian Revolution and so on, Jews from Russia were massively emigrating to, I don't know how it's called, not yet United Kingdom, Great Britain, okay. And the worry was, and this logic is present up to this day, the logic was, let's just keep the Jews out of here, support them there, move into Palestine, just that we get rid of them here. So it shouldn't surprise us that Germany, the perpetrator of Shoah, is the strongest supporter of Israel in Europe. Paradoxically, the anti-Semitism of the supporters of Israel was supplemented by the fascist tendencies in Zionism itself. In an oft-quoted passage, Sheila Ben-Habib pointed out that the members of the present government of Israel are, quote, the legatees of a long line of Judeo-fascism, which none other than Albert Einstein, joined by Hannah Arendt and Sidney Hook, denounced in their open letter to New York Times in 1948. They write, among the most disturbing political phenomena of our time is the emergence in the newly created state of Israel of the Freedom Party, a political party closely akin in its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. Today, the legatees of the party and movement, Likud, was established by Menachem Begin, are empowering Israel, and they have brought upon Israel the worst disaster since Holocaust, end of quote. And the story goes on. Remember Anders Breivik, the Norwegian anti-immigrant mass murderer. He was anti-Semitic but pro-Israel, since he saw in the state of Israel the first line of defense against the Muslim expansion. He even wanted to see the Jerusalem temple rebuilt. Theodor Herzl himself used a similar metaphor in his Der Judenstaat from 1896, the founding text of Zionism. Quote, for Europe, we will build there in Palestine a part of the wall against Asia. We will provide ramparts against barbarism, end of quote. Should we be really surprised to find the traces of this stance? Where, in shock, Reinhard Heinrich himself, the mastermind of Shoah, who wrote in 1935, quote, Heydrich speaking, we must separate the Jews into two categories, the Zionists and the partisans of assimilation. The Zionists profess a strictly racial concept, and through emigration to Palestine, they help to build their own Jewish state. Our good wishes and our official goodwill go with them, end of quote. Zionist anti-Semitism at its purest and clearest. Is this just a thing of the past and of European anti-Semites? It's more complex. Please prepare first clip, which really horrified me. You will see a report from Israeli TV of what some rabbis teaching at the state-financed Eli Academy, an elite school where many officers are educated, what they are saying. The first clip, please.
בגלל ביטול העבדות החוקית, אז נוצרו מגרעות עכשיו, כי אין אין אחריות על הנכס הזה. בעזרת השם זה יחזור. הם ירצו הגויים להיות עבדים שלנו.
זהו הרב אליעזר קשתיאל, ראש ישיבת בני דוד בעלי.
הכי טוב להיות עבד של יהודים. הם שמחים להיות עבדים, רוצים להיות עבדים.
הישיבה הזו מיועדת לבוגרי המכינה הקדם צבאית, המוכרת והיוקרתית בציונות הדתית. רבים מהם מגיעים אליה לאחר שהם מסיימים שירות צבאי.
במקום שהוא יהיה סתם מסתובב ברחובות ועושה שטויות ואלימות ומזיק אחד לשני. עכשיו הוא עבד, החיים שלו מתחילים להתנהל.
לפי הרב קשתיאל, האדונים הם היהודים, העבדים הם הערבים. החלוקה לא מקרית, זה עניין ביולוגי, בעיות גנטיות.
יש מסביבנו עמים כאלה, בעיות גנטיות. תשאל ערבי פשוט, איפה אתה רוצה להיות? הוא רוצה להיות תחת הכיבוש. למה? כי הם לא, יש להם בעיה גנטית, הם לא יודעים לנהל מדינה, הם לא יודעים לעשות כלום. תראה איך הם נראים.
והנה התורה כולה, תורת הגזע.
בוודאי שיש גזענות, מה אנחנו לא יודעים שיש גזעים שונים בעולם, מה זה סוד זה, מה זה לא נכון, זה נכון, מה לעשות?
בעוד יומיים עם ישראל יציין את יום השואה, בין היתר את החלוקה של הנאצים לגזעים, עליונים ונחותים, והנה בגרסה העברית.
כן, אנחנו גזענים, אנחנו מאמינים בגזענות. נכון, יש גזעים בעולם ויש תכונות גנטיות של עמים, וזה דורש מאיתנו לחשוב איך לעזור להם. יש הבדלים בין גזעים, וזה בדיוק סיבה להשית עזרה.
מי שמחה להחליט מי זה מי?
אני רואה שאני מגיע להישגים הרבה יותר מרשימים ממנו.
ראש מוסדות בני דוד, הרב אלי סדן, עומד מאחורי הליהוק של הרב רפי פרץ לראש איחוד מפלגות הימין. כעת המועמד המוביל לתפקיד שר החינוך. רק הרב פרץ הורשה לשאת דברים בפני תלמידי המכינה לפני הבחירות. נתניהו ובנט סורבו. רבני בני דוד מהווים את התשתית הדתית, הערכית והחינוכית של מי שמיועד להוביל את מערכת החינוך שלנו. כיצד הם רואים את השואה?
השואה באמת זה לא שהרגו את היהודים, זאת לא השואה. כל התירוצים האלה כמו זה אידיאולוגי או זה שיטתי או כל זה לא שטויות. זה כיוון שזה נבע מתוך אידיאולוגיה, במידה מסוימת זה יותר מוסרי מאשר סתם שאנשים רוצחים. הומניזם, כל התרבות החילונית זה אנחנו מאמינים באדם, זה השואה. השואה באמת זה להיות פלורליסט, כן? להאמין באני מאמין באדם. זה נקרא שואה.
זהו הרב גיורא רדלר, וזו ההגדרה שלו לשואה.
שהקדוש ברוך הוא כבר הרבה שנים צועק שנגמרה הגולה, אבל אנשים לא מקשיבים לו, וזאת המחלה שלהם שאותה צריך לרפא על ידי השואה.
שימו לב לשיעור המדהים הזה, תחת הכותרת היחס לשואה. כך הוא מחנך את תלמידיו על הנאצים ועל היטלר.
ההיגיון של הגרמנים הוא נכון יחסית לעצמם. אומר היטלר שקבוצה מסוימת באוכלוסייה היא זרע הפורענות לכל האנושות, בגללה כל האנושות תלך לאבדון, הם מרעים לאנושות, ולכן צריך להשמיד אותם. האידיאולוגיה הזאת נשמעת לך לא הגיונית? רעה מאוד.
זה לא נשמע מוסרי.
משה רבינו, אכזרי רשע כמו היטלר? לא. למה לא? יש דבר אחד רע בעולם וזה להיות צבוע. משנה לך אם הורגים אותך עכשיו מסכין או כמו שהרגו את הגג או שהורגים אותך בתא גזים, סליחה.
התלמידים נדהמים, מנסים לסתור את הרע, והוא ממשיך בשלו.
בוא נתחיל מהשאלה אם היטלר צודק או לא. 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 הוא האדם הכי צודק שיש. ודאי שהוא צודק כל מילה שהוא אומר. ובאידיאולוגיה שלו הוא צודק. יש עולם גברי שנלחם, שעניינו כבוד, שעניינו החוות לוחמים. ויש את העולם הנשי, הרכרוכי, המוסרי, לתת הלחי השנייה. ואנחנו חושבים שהיהודים הם אלה שנושאים את המורשת הזאת, מנסים במילים שלנו לקלקל את כל האנושות, ולכן הם האויב האמיתי. עכשיו, הוא צודק ב100%, חוץ משהו בצד הלא נכון.
האמירות האלה חוזרות על עצמן שוב ושוב בשיעורי בני דוד לאורך השנים. לא פליטת פה, אלא אג'נדה סדורה.
ראשי הבית היהודי כהנא, סדן ופרץ, עושים שימוש במכינות הקדם צבאיות כדי להפנים בחניכים ערכים משיחיים. החומרה שבדבר נובעת מכך שמשרד החינוך, שאמור להיות אחראי על התכנים, נמצא בידיים שלהם.
ייתכן ובקרוב מי שמזוהה עם התפיסות של המכינה והישיבה הזאת יהיה אחראי על חינוך תלמידי ישראל.
So here we are. Now you will say such an extreme stance is explicitly advocated only by a tiny minority. But you saw there Smotrich, you saw there Netanyahu. But I think it brings out the underlying premises that sustain what the state of Israel is now doing on the West Bank. The implications of this stance were clearly visible in the late July of 2024, when a number of ministers and members of Knesset, as well as journalists and TV commentators, criticized a raid by the IDF military police on the Teiman base in the south of Israel, in which it arrested a number of reservists accused of abusing imprisoned Palestinians. The second clip, please. This is really depressing, I warn you.
Something very sick and evil is happening in Israel's jails, and almost nobody is talking about it. Israel is running, and let's be absolutely explicit about this, a system of torture camps. Welcome to hell is not an exaggeration. 9 Israeli reservists sodomized by inserting metal objects up the anus of the prisoner and causing terrible internal injuries.
This is leaked CCTV video of what Israeli military police allege is a detainee being sodomized as he's hidden from the view of security cameras by riot shields.
They were arrested, taken away to a detention center where there was an enormous outcry. And there was actually an invasion of the detention center, including politicians, in support of the Israeli soldiers.
שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל! הכל!
In Israel, the reaction is it right to sodomize prisoners? This conversation went on breakfast television. It's sort of their equivalent in Israel of GMTV.
מבצעים עבירה, חשודים בעבירה של אינוס, בעצור כפות. זה לא מעניין אותך?
בגדול, עוד פעם, זה מעניין לי את העכוז מה עשו לאיש חמאס הזה. אני כל הזמן זוכר, קודם כל, הדבר היחיד שמבחינתי הוא בעיה פה, זה שזו לא איזושהי מדיניות מוסדרת של המדינה להתעלל בעצירים. כי בגדול, זה גם, קודם כל מגיע להם, וזה אחלה נקמה שאנחנו צריכים לתת להם. ודבר שני, אולי זה גם ישמש אותנו קצת יותר כהרתעה.
So you have Israeli TV pundits discussing the merits of allowing Palestinian prisoners to be raped. Many members of the cabinet are justifying it. Take the example of the Israeli energy minister, Eli Cohen. Reservists who do holy work and guard the despicable Hamas. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is the security minister, went even further.
Take your hands off our reservists, like it is in the prison service, so it is in the IDF. Our fighters deserve full support.
This tells you that something has gone wrong, but it also tells you that something's gone wrong with us.
Udi meant when he said, now it's in the open. They proudly show this. There is no moral embarrassment, no denial, and so on and so on. Can one even imagine what reaction, our reaction would have been if the same thing were to happen in Russia or in Gaza? They were doing something like this to Jewish hostages. The entire affair was downplayed, almost ignored in our big Western media, and this willful ignorance, the very opposite of simply not knowing it, rings more loudly than all cries and shouts the death knell of, I think, Western liberal democracy. So how are we to react to it? Now comes my favorite shocking detail. One of the surprising voices of reason in Israel is Ephraim Halevi, the ex-chief of Mossad, who said days after September 11th attack, quote, "We don't have the luxury to wait. We have to have a viable policy which would deal with the presence in this area of the Jews and the Palestinians. We are doomed to live together. I don't want to say we are doomed to die together. And if our approach is that we are doomed to live together, we can't simply live together with one part of the equation having the upper hand and ignoring the aspirations of the other. There has to be the beginning of a meeting of minds." Then, Udi Aloni, a former leader of Shin Bet, made this point even more succinctly. Quote, "We Israelis will have security only when they, Palestinians, will have hope. This is the equation." End of quote. Words for which you may lose your job in the Free West. What times do we live in when secret police tells truth public media don't dare to utter? Israel as a whole is paying a heavy price for ignoring this lesson. It competes with Trump on who will most brutally display raw and arbitrary power without any ethical concerns. And again, I made consciously this weird point. Secret police, or whatever you call it, is for me a very mixed entity. They can be bad, but in authoritarian country, they usually play, I'm not laughing, I'm not mean mocking, a good role. Why? Because they tell the truth, at least confidentially. I read now some wonderful analysis where say the only true opposition, apart from a couple of intellectuals, blah, blah, now to Netanyahu government are secret members of secret police. Did you read in your media that 550 of them signed a declaration against attacking Gaza for peace with Arabs and so on and so on? We really live in a crazy times. Or I will quote now this unimportant small guy, Udi Aloni, quote, "We are witnessing a symbolic shift in the ethical superego between Israel and Hamas. Hamas insists on portraying itself as humanitarian. They present hostages in good condition, deny atrocities, and avoid publicly glorifying acts of cruelty. Their superego, the image they construct for themselves and the world, is one of universal humanism, intuitively understanding that Palestine is becoming a global signifier of universality. Israel, by contrast, has undergone a radical transformation. It has removed its ideological mask and presents pure power for its own sake. Public figures, soldiers, and political leaders openly take pride in brutality, celebrating the suffering of detainees, justifying the murder of women and children, and normalizing genocidal rhetoric. Israel has killed its superego. This is a reversal in the Israeli self-image that is almost impossible for Israelis to grasp, yet obvious to any outside observer. The only point of slight theoretical disagreement I have here with Udi is that I think if we use the term superego in the way it was elaborated by Lacan, not as a proper ethical agency, but as the ultimate obscene agency, which allows you, under the cloak of some morality, to do horrible things, then we may say with some irony that Israeli politics today and the Trumpian populism in general, although they are not the same in their inner structure, precisely reassert superego. Superego, the pseudo-ethical agency bombarding individuals with the injunction to enjoy, is externalized in the public space dominated by digital media. The most disturbing fact is that Israel and the US don't just ignore humanitarian concerns, they evoke them to justify their ethnic cleansing. You remember from Eli Academy that rabbi who said, and then when they were attacked, they repeated this. But what did we say wrong when we said Arabs should be enslaved? This is our way of helping them, of allowing them to get some stability. Gilles Deleuze wrote decades ago, "Si vous étiez pris dans le rêve de l'autre, vous étiez foutu. If you are caught into another's dream, you are fucked." This is now happening to Palestinians. ensnared in Trump's dream of a new, happy, peaceful existence when they will be resettled into far safer and more beautiful communities fitted with new and modern homes. According to Trump, such a forced evacuation would give Palestinians a chance to be happy, safe, and free. But we know from Stalinism what enforced happiness means. It is certainly not what Palestinians desire. So back to Halevi. What happens if one of or both sides exclude such a meeting of minds? What happens is what is happening now. The stronger side engages in ethnic cleansing, even genocide of its opponent. In such a situation, do we, external observers, have any right to condemn Palestinians for fighting back? In the same way as Israel is attacking them, with arms, with terror, but are we, Western Europeans in this case, really just external observers? I think the predominant stance of our governments is even worse than that of Israel. The main European countries again and again declare how they worry about the suffering in Gaza and on the West Bank. But this doesn't prevent them to continue to supply Israel with arms and to prevent any serious diplomatic actions against it. Why? Because, as your Chancellor Merz said recently, Israel is doing the dirty work for us. I recently spoke with a couple of high European functionaries from different countries and parties, and in deep privacy, of course. I got the same message. Of course, it is horrible what Israel is doing. It can even be called genocide. But we should realistically accept the sad fact that ethnic cleansing works. With clearly delimited borders and ethnic homogeneity, a great Israel may bring peace to the area, so let's let it happen and then accept it as a fact. So what should the Israeli Jews do? Some of my Palestinian colleagues, like Zahi Zalwa, think that since the Jews are the colonizers there, the only solution is that they should commit a symbolic suicide. They should radically transform their symbolic identity. The problem I see with this idea is that by what they are doing now, caught in the genocidal mania, they already are becoming worse fundamentalists than the Muslim Arabs. They, the Zionist Jews, are already doing this, committing a symbolic suicide, abandoning the most precious parts of their symbolic legacy. Or, as Yuval Noah Harari, with whom I definitely don't always agree, put it. It's a nice quote. Judaism has survived. It has become the world champion in surviving catastrophes. But it has never faced a catastrophe like we are dealing with right now, which is a spiritual catastrophe for Judaism itself. The worst case scenario that we are facing right now, we can still prevent it, is the potential of an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and the West Bank, resulting in the expulsion of 2 million, maybe more Palestinians. From there, the establishment of Greater Israel, the disintegration of Israeli democracy, and the creation of a new Israel based on an ideology of Jewish supremacy. The worship of what were completely anti-Jewish laws for the last 2 millennia. End of quote. One should only supplement these lines with the sad conclusion. The spiritual catastrophe of which Harari speaks is not a sudden event which disturbed authentic Jewishness. Its potential was there from the very beginning. But, and this is my conclusion, does this mean that there is something especially destructive in Jewish identity itself? No. We are all part of this story, Racism was potentially inscribed into the Enlightenment project. Jews were for thousands of years victims of anti-Semitism. Arabs that surround Israel focus on it in order to avoid openly confronting their own antagonisms. In all justified criticism of what Israel is doing now, it is absolutely essential to include ourselves into the story. Racism begins the moment we pretend to adopt the role of an innocent observer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Slavoj. First, before we start our conversation and some Q&A, I want to tell, can we put some light also on the people? Because it's going to be, yeah, much better. We are not in a show here. Thank you. So, first of all, this is the first event in a series that we are starting here that called Babylon Exile. And Berlin for a while was a good place for exile for many people. The way the police is acting now, it's becoming less of a place of safety. But as a concept, we thought to use Babylon as a place that we can do discussion. So in October 7, we are bringing here Ayman Udi, that is the leader of the Palestinian Citizen of Israel. I don't think we heard a lot from this. There are 2 million Palestinian citizens of Israel that are acting in a very different place in a way, the role, because first of all, they all speak Hebrew, or most of them. Israel doesn't allow them to be really fully Palestinian. It's enough they said one joke, or if a Palestinian citizen of Israel will sit here with me and say things that I say, tomorrow somebody will knock on the door of the family. And once I said something that sounded to many people very terrible. I said it's like Theresienstadt of Israel, that's where they act like they're acting nice to the Palestinian. But those people that you saw here, they already target them also for ethnic cleansing. And I think that the voice is more moderate, is more pragmatic, is more understanding the situation of both of them. And I think Ayman Udi, that is the leader of the party, and also a leader of many progressive Jews, and an amazing, courageous person that for me it's beautiful because he's, in one hand he's much more moderate than me, in the other hand much more courageous than me, and he will be here on October 7, and I would love all of you and tell other people to join to listen this amazing voice. Also another thing, tomorrow and on Sunday I'm screening here a film, my film that called Why Is We American. We show it in New York, that is with Miss Lauren Hill. And the interesting part of it that connects to this conversation also, it's about the family of Amiri Baraka, an amazing black Marxist poet, maybe the best one, that I was teaching him in Jenin refugee camp because Mahmoud Darwish told me about him. And when we have to open the film in America, they told us, no, he's anti-Semitic. And the way they use anti-Semitism to silence everyone, it's so scary. I really love you to come to see this film here, Why Is We American, and to see the fight of black Marxists in America and the connection. But it's rise again, the anti-Semitism. And I want to say, I really feel very strongly that your counselor and also the previous counselor Scholz, they are true anti-Semitic. Not only they support to create the Jew as a fascist, the way they silence progressive voices of Jew, for me, they're killing us second time. They killed my family 80 years ago. They kill now my spirit when we cannot teach what the German Jewish philosopher taught us. That was definitely not Zionism. And I don't mind that they allow everything, but they are silencing the voice that really came from here and could give a lot of redemption to the place back there. And I don't know exactly, and that's also I like to hear from people, not now, what is the role that we can do? People, that Jewishness is very important for them, that said exactly what Slavoj spoke about, that really the best friends of Israel are the anti-Semitic. That people who try to stop this genocide are people who don't see, because when your counselor is crying, is because the Jew is just an object for him to clean his conscience. He's not a subject that tries to become a better person. They are using us first to sell and buy weapons. And that's where all the time we forget to speak about the money. I think sometimes it's so manipulative the way they use the Shoah, the Holocaust to support Israel. Right now there's a huge investigation about submarine that Israel bought from Germany for billions of dollars, and it's clear that it's corrupted. It's clear from Israel that there is corrupted. Nobody did a real investigation here about this corruption. And I ask people in Germany, it's not enough just to speak ideology. We have to fight on it, to reveal the structure of how Germany support Israel against all odds. And more they support Israel now in the middle of the genocide, for me, is a pure anti-Semitic act. So this is something I wanted to speak before we open the conversation to other things. And I love to see you in the film, and of course in Ayman Ouda, that you can come. And I hope that we'll be able to continue these meetings here with people that can think with us together.
Can I just add very briefly? I don't... what is happening today is very complex. No, not really complex, but complex in the sense that I see so much weakness in the left, in the sense that they are not ready to rethink their hundreds-year-old presuppositions. For example, you know who is a very interesting figure for me? John Locke, the great British Enlightenment. You know that he supported the killing of Indians, whatever you call them, Native Americans. I hate the term Native Americans. You must have heard this old story by me. At a debate, a white guy, an Indian so-called, referred to himself as an Indian in America. A white guy told, no, this is not correct. You are using the colonial term. You are Native American. And the Indian answered him perfectly. He says, first, what is the opposite of nature? Culture. So I'm Native American, you're culture American. But the second thing that I loved is he said, sorry, I much prefer to be called Indian, because then at least my name is a monument to white man's stupidity, who thought they were in India. But another thing, you know where I see laziness of the left? Yes, Locke. Why Locke? Locke provided a very Marxist-sounding justification of the annihilation of Native Americans, Indians, whatever you want, which again sounds very almost Marxist. He said that the progress of humanity resides in how well do you exploit natural resources. And Indians, with just they're running after buffaloes or whatever and so on, they don't properly exploit the land that they own. So they should be displaced, and white people who are much more economic. And now you will say, who cares about Locke? Even in Marx, you find this stance often. Second thing, the laziness. The problem of fascism is very complex. I think if history is allowed to go its own way, if there is a tendency today, it's towards something that I would call soft fascism. Not in the sense that it's good, but in the sense that it's not necessarily ultra-aggressive. By fascism, so I still think maybe we can use the term fascism. By fascism, I mean a fundamental operation of, you want, fascism means, as we all know, conservative modernization. You want economic dynamic development of capitalism and so on, but you don't want its social implications, liberalism, decay, and so on. So you want free market and so on, but controlled by a strong state traditional ideology. And although I'm very ambiguous about China, not opposed to it, I was sad to discover that they are explicitly following this way. Please remember this name. I wrote an article, I think, for Die Welt about it. If you want to understand China today, read, you can find his book on some pirate version, Wang Huning. He's one of the 7 standing members of the Politburo who really run the country. And he visited America more than 20 years ago. And was fascinated by, on the one hand, its economic dynamic, and on the other hand, social decay. So his idea was, how can we get the good side without the bad side? And his solution is basically fascist. He defines himself as neoconservative. He said, not forget about Mao. He said, yes, economic dynamic, but return to Confucianism, conservative social values, and so on. Now, as for, I cannot do Udi without a dirty joke, but it's not dirty joke, it's a fact. I recently, maybe we can learn something from ancient people. My God. I read a book about the development of sexuality in Tibet. You know what I discovered? That in ancient Tibet, till communists take over, for a woman, young woman, to get married, it was presupposed that she should sleep at least with 20 men to get proper experience. Because only in this way you can properly serve as a wife and so on and so on. But more generally, not to get lost, what I think is that this is what's happening today in China, in Turkey, in India, in a different way in Russia. This is what I call soft fascism. While what we get in the United States, it's a libertarian fascism. So we should be careful here. The leftist trap is, you see something really bad emerging now, and you say, oh, what was really bad in 20th century? Fascism, so let's call it fascism. No, it's much more complex. If we ignore this complexity, the consequences will be terrifying. For example, what really scared me in the last week is, you remember the big demonstrations in the United Kingdom? Hundreds of thousands of people, and it's all too simple to play this arrogant upper middle class political way. They are all victims of neo-fascist propaganda and so on. On the other hand, I see continuity with Nazism where you wouldn't expect it. Since I talked only about Israel, Gaza, and so on, let me move to Russia and to our prelude, Wagner. Do you still remember Wagner Group? You know why it was called Wagner Group? Because Prigozhin, the boss, was a Nazi admirer of Hitler, and he learned that Hitler's preferred composer was Wagner. That's why Wagner Group. Now, after, and I must, in these depressive times, only jokes can save us. I think I used this in a debate with Carlo Rovelli to give him my reading of temporal retroactivity and so on. You know, there is the ultimate joke on Putin. It was even in our media, maybe you remember it. The idea is that a minister approaches Putin and says, we have to stop this, you know, different time zones So when here it's noon, in Russia it's already 2 p.m. and so on. We need universal time because otherwise strange things are happening. Like this minister says, I called Chinese foreign minister to congratulate him his birthday, and he said, oh sorry, different time zone, it happened with us a day before, no? And you know, in this joke, but it's the truth, what Putin answers, yes, I agree with you, because of the difference in time zone, I learned that I phoned Prigozhin's widow to express to her my sorrow for her husband's death 1 hour before his plane even took off. No, that's how politics is. But more seriously, Wagner Group, now embarrassed, they changed Wagner as pro-Nazi. The repressed always returns. You know how officially, not in rumor, how these big Russian groups which now dominate in these central Sahel countries, Burkina Faso and so on, you know what is their official name? Africa Corps. And they claim, oh, it has nothing to do with Nazism. Yes, but why did they then select, you know, Rommel and so on, exactly this name? So I think what is happening today is that we are entering a new era, but okay, I speak too much. You can ask me later about this. You know why I'm nonetheless not a total pessimist? Because admit this, Israel, you told me this, and I know from my American friends, why, if they are so invincible, do those in power act in such a panicky way? You know, arresting, firing people, and so on. No, our words still matter. I was for a long time advocating this cynical view, you know, whatever we say, it goes on. No, no, no. Those in power act in a panic. Look what Trump is doing now. Look in what panic you and other Jewish friends told me Israel is doing. Many of my Jewish friends, progressive, for them Israel is now a nightmare, want to emigrate to United States. When they apply for a job, they usually don't get a job. And they discovered why. Because there is a direct link between Israeli, whatever, informal secret service, foreign ministry, and American campuses. Whenever there is a Jew from Israel applying for a job, they ask Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, whatever, who is this guy? If he is in any way too critical, he will not get the job. This, if you ask me, you know, I argue against the term hope.
Now I will be the pessimist because we have to reverse things. Because I try to be optimistic. So the way I am optimistic, I think about Mamdani. So when everything falls apart, there is something happening in New York now that I'm hold myself. But I want to start with Wagner Group. You understand that what really the Kanzler, when he said Israel do the dirty job, they really said Israel is Wagner Group of America. That's what Israel is doing. They're doing the dirty job. And therefore, it's not only Israel responsible for this genocide.
No, absolutely.
The whole West. Now, what my fear that Israel build on something that prove a bit to be right. They build that the right wing in Europe and in America will be faster before the international law. So if they'll be hold enough to do their crimes, you will not go after them. It's proved itself in America, and now if you heard what Bibi speak, he said, look how the Muslim taking off Europe and stuff like that. They joining totally, and this demonstration you spoke about in England, there was Israeli flags with all this huge fascist anti-immigration thing, and you saw Israeli immigrant to England going with anti-immigration demonstration, because for them, it's the Muslims are the one that has to be kicked out. That's why New York is so symbolic that not only Mamdani is so amazing, but he came from a Muslim family. And I think, not that we care so much about it, but in this case, it's very symbolic. And it's very symbolic that the people who support him a lot is Jewish Voice for Peace. It's all the young generation of Jews that go against their parents that used to send money to the Zionist entity. So when I'm in New York, I'm sometimes proud again to be Jew now. And that's a very important thing for somebody who lost his identity. Now, I want to say about those generals that you like so much, the Secret Service people who speak against the right wing. There is a phenomenon in Israel that everyone, when one criminal leaving the army after he did a lot of war crimes, he become retired and then he start to think and he become moderate. And you saw it in this famous film, The Gatekeeper. All of them, suddenly they want peace with Palestinians. All of them are people who send people to kill Palestinians in their home, arresting Palestinians. And then when they retired, suddenly they start to clean, they create a new history. But the fact is that it's not those crazy people that you show us, that really they take over, then it's terrified. But the people who give the money to this war machine are the high-tech people of Tel Aviv, are the cool people that creating those billions of dollars. When I so much supporting BDS and I tell Germany, how dare you tell me not to use a non-violence way, and German people on the name of the Nazi grandfather doesn't allow me to call to a non-violence act against Israel. And now what I see, Microsoft are building now in Israel a high computer for $20 billion. They're going to invest in Israel. Our friend Yuval, that I love so much, that got the Oscar for No Other Land, he just showed how Microsoft holding in their clouds the entire names of Palestinians that are going to be executed. So there is something, we are in the street and we're so much happy with the grassroots, and we feel that our modern, I call it superego in a simple way, like our belief in humanity, it's happening. And what's happening really with the money now, they continue to give Israel a lot of money, and the pilots that killing babies every day, they're all going to vote for the Zionist left party. So there is something, a split within the one in Israel. There is a split that some look very humanistic and they'll speak, and when they retire, they said very good things, but they're so much part of the war machine. And I don't, that's why I gave up on, if there was a true opposition in Israel, I would stay maybe still Israeli. Maybe I wouldn't even support BDS if there was 40% people against genocide. But really, all the demonstration you see, it's because of the hostages. If people really, how many people go to the street in Israel against genocide? Maybe 10,000 people. And it's scary, and it's sad, and it's break my heart, and I don't know what to do about it, and I'm calling for help. And I think that my voice in Germany maybe have a merit because I'm so much involved with German Jewish philosophy. So I think maybe people will listen to me here. And then we met before with the other government. We went to meet Claudia Roth, that she acted like she listened to us, and we show us an international law, and we show, and then she is the one who clapped the hands only to the Jew and not to the Palestinian on the same movie. And it's break your heart because you realize that the Linke, the anti-Deutsche came from there, and the Green don't dare to criticize Israel. And everything that is human here, when it's get to Israel, they support pure fascism. And I don't know what to do about it. So that's why I'm pessimistic.
Yeah, but again, you know what's the problem for me? Not a problem, maybe a good thing, that nonetheless, the miracle is that, at least if one is to believe statistics, in all big Western states, Western European, even in Germany, more than 50% of people are on the side of Palestine. And how, nonetheless, the system works? No. What you said, here is another problem. And here I would start the attack on this new, whatever we call it, techno, or as Varoufakis would have put it, techno-feudalism, or what. That's for me the basic paradox of Trump. On the one hand, you have what I call, with all irony, leftist Trumpians who are even more horrible, Steve Bannon and so on, who wants to dispossess Microsoft, all of them. They're the most brutal. But then you have these mega corporations and so on. So that's the problem with Trump. He tries to be populist, but at the same time, again, high tech. And here we didn't yet find the way how to. The struggle is the struggle for so-called normal people. That's why I agree with you. I was once in contact, it didn't work. He was afraid. I appreciate Bernie Sanders because he said a very wise thing already 10 more years ago. He said the Democratic Party, if it wants to have a chance, should stop this obsession with if we move too much to the left, we will lose the center. Trump was successful here. Trump, how did he win? Not by moving to the center, but by radicalizing. And know what he said? Bernie Sanders, the great figure of American left, he said our target should be those poor white people who are now seduced by Trump. Don't worry about the middle class and so on. So I am generally pessimist, but I believe in miracles, not divine miracles, but you know, things can happen, who knows. For the time being, I think the situation is horrible. Even some of my leftist friends celebrate, how is he called, Traore, the new boss of Burkina Faso. Yeah, anti-Western. Yeah, but this is the Putin type anti-Western orientation. You know that the parliament of Burkina Faso, a couple of weeks ago, unanimously voted to criminalize homosexuality. You get 3 to 5 years, I think, if you are caught in a homosexual act. You know that for Putin was the first foreign country to fully recognize Taliban in Afghanistan, claiming their progressive anti-imperialist powers and so on. So what I fear is that the result of this West standing with Israel and general confused politics is that this new bloc is forming now, Putin, China, Modi, even India now, and so on. And in the long term, what Trump is doing is really, it will sound pathetically, destroying what still is worthwhile in European emancipatory Enlightenment tradition.
But I want to say about what you said, the miracle. You remember, I lived, I don't know, no, I lived for 1 year in Jenin refugee camp. I work in Masrach el-Khoria in the Freedom Theater. And my dearest friend, Julian Omer Khamis, was assassinated there. And I got very depressed, and we moved with the student to Ramallah. And I wrote to our friend, Alan Badiou, like, fuck the revolution. I just want to help some people run away from here. I got very depressed. And he wrote me a line that sounded very, like, kind of Badiou, very naivete, but also was beautiful. He said, just Udi, remember, the revolution is always a surprise, never a result. And it's mean like we have to continue to act correctly and do the stuff. And the problem is in the left, because I gave up in a way the fight on Israel, and I still respect people within the place that try to change from inside. But if we try to change in the left on Europe, something go wrong, and I think we should look what Mamdani do. You know, many times I agree with you why I'm against political correct. Unless when I hear you, immediately I support political correct as well, because it's like he's crossing the lines. But in general, we forgot sometimes that the fight, and this is what you spoke about, Bernie, Amiri Baraka, the person that my film Why Is We American about, that he is considered the most radical black poet, he all the time said, the lower class white people are my brothers. It was very important for him not to go only on the race fight, to feel that race fight in America, people ready to fight against oppression, but will never fight against exploitation. And this is a very important part there. And we, many times, the political correct, that in part of it, I support it, especially when I hear Slavoj telling dirty jokes. But in the other hand, we move the war so much to the language in academia because we're tired to go to favelas, to work with really the lower class and create a movement from there. And I think that's what we could learn from Lula. And this miracle that happened in New York, we should try to move it to other cities, to Berlin, to other, because suddenly Mamdani came and he doesn't compromise on anything. He speaks truth to power, but he put around him very pragmatic people, but he doesn't change the language.
Okay, maybe we should allow, because that's my problem with Mamdani is not what you think. It's that it's my problem with him is that remember nonetheless that he is within the Democratic Party. He tried to remain within, in some sense, within the system. And here, I don't think we should get into this trap of let's be principled, inside and outside. I'm for total pragmatism here. In certain situations, you try to move within the established party. In other situations, you go outside, you know. As for political correctness, of course I support all of its goals and so on. I just think that if you know the situation in the United States, how it works, it's so clearly upper middle class movement which deals with problems which are simply of no concern to ordinary people. What do I mean by this? No, I don't, wait a minute. Thanks, okay, if I were to pay you more like Udi, you would applaud more. No, what I mean is that, just go south of United States to Mexico. I was there, I met feminists there who are totally different, you know. Their attitude is not this sex is penetration, is male domination, you know. Their attitude is, yes, I want to fuck, yes, I want to have a good sex. It's so refreshing to hear this. And at the same time, they are so aware, this is so important, that screw old traditions. You know, which is a wonderful detail, maybe you already know it, I used it a couple of times. In some mid-level, smaller Mexican town, they said, oh, this modern bourgeois law is too formal, doesn't work, no. And so they, for minor crimes, not murders, but like for them minor crimes, rapes and so on, they established a committee of old wise men who, following their ancient traditions, will make a judgment. And then a thing happened. Two older guys were friends. One of them raped the other guy's daughter. Okay, since it was considered a minor offense, it went to that committee of wise traditional people. And the judgment was, yes, it was not nice, so the rapist guy should give, not to the woman, his friend, two, how do you call it, baskets, if you have beer in, caskets, whatever.
You know, I don't like those stories, so I'm not participating in them.
Okay, no. Again, but you know from whom I hear the same story, from my good friend, now the revolution is screwed up there, Bolivia, Alvaro Garcia Linera. It's the same. He told me, yeah, old tradition, blah, blah, but don't trust it too much. I still believe in this sense in modernization.
Okay, guys, I think we should give question to the audience now. I just want to say that for me, Slavoj sometimes really drives me crazy on those things, and yet I owe him so much because always, even also when he drives me crazy, when I go home, he's forced me to think. And it's an amazing thing because sometimes he just said stupid jokes, but there is something there that really make me think. I agree with the concept that there was something wrong in American of political correctness, but yet to bring those weird stories, you know, that create other stories, there is something also so powerful how America create the woman in the world as a subject, how Europe after have to protect women that were abused. So yeah, in different countries there is stories like that and this, but as a movement, if there was one problem with the Me Too movement, it's only that it didn't go also to the lower class. But what is offering to the world was so important, so part of changing attitude to who is a subject, that we have to embrace it and then correct it if we can, and not say it's only a women fight. We're all also part of universalite, but we can let them lead the fight and understand when things might go wrong, but we cannot. If we cannot include like all those fights to one fight, we'll make a mistake. And to bring different stories, you know, like kind of weird stories that show how ridiculous it is. Of course, there are some ridiculous things, but as a movement, those things create a lot of things that offering a new discourse for a new generation.
No, here
I know we are not agree.
And you know who disagrees? I will tell you.
And I like that we don't agree on that.
Yeah. You know who invented the name Me Too? An old black lady, and he instantly, years afterwards, now a couple, denounced it. Says it's totally abuse. They should. So I'm not speaking.
It's not important is that there is a movement, and if white feminism took over, we can fix it. You know, it's not that everything.
Why didn't then we fix it?
But some of them did fix it. Some of them did fix it, and there are people like Sarah Ahmed and other women that like wrote amazing books that offering different things. And they criticize you, but you also offering amazing stuff. And our job as people who move and try to create the movement is listening and take the things and try to see what is working right for us to bring us to the next level.
You know where I disagree?
And sometimes go
because you said
up.
It just went wrong. No, it didn't just went wrong. Something was wrong, I think, in the very approach, in the sense that political correctness, wokeness, and so on, is for me, now I will say something very problematic, the ultimate defense of the existing regime against true radical movement. Because you know that in America, you already have what they call corporate Me Too, corporate and so on. You said they made a mistake that they didn't go to the lower classes. This was not a mistake. This was written in their concept.
It's not true. Okay. It's
okay.
You have here a support and.
My God, when we the people took power, you know.
When people clap their hands to you, I'm getting worried.
When we take power, you will. I promise you that in Gulag, where you be, you will get a nice cell, a nicer one.
I think that I will hold my answer for later because I want to give you question to the audience. Yes, here there is.
But will it be
here? They bring the mic.
Yeah.
Hello. We just ended with talking about feminism, about Me Too. I want to maybe ask you about what's going on in Syria, especially in Syria.
Syria,
yeah, exactly. So after Assad's fall, the news are still really, really upsetting, and the situation did not get better. And speaking of feminism, there are like hundreds of women from the minorities of like Alawis and Druze that has been kidnapped by Jawlani militias, by Islamist militias that are now de facto the rulers of Syria. And what I find very amazing and very sad that there is no support or no mentioning of that in the Western media at all.
Yes,
so,
I totally, sorry to interrupt you, then you can go on. You cannot even imagine how much I support you here, but you know why? Here I go a little bit, you will again disagree with me. Because, you know, okay, now anti-Zionism, everybody knows, but the moment you say something too critical about Islam?
Political Islam.
Islamophobia. No, they also should be criticized.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely crucial.
My question. So my question is, like, for me, as I'm a Syrian woman, and I find I have to walk.
From which are you Alawite? For which group?
Alawite. Sadly, I don't belong.
But
I am.
Weren't they compromised by Assad, or?
Yes, they were partly complicit, and I'm an atheist. I'm secular. I call for a democratic secular Syria. This is my hope. And my question is, I find myself without allies, or I have to walk a very, very thin line, because when I see people maybe on my side, they're usually right wing, or very pro-Israel in a way that I do not respect. Of course, I respect the Jewish life. I don't have to. I hope I don't have to say this. But I find that we don't have allies. Like in the left in Europe and the US is not really an ally for anyone who's suffering from Islamic extremism. So how do you have any advice?
But you see, this is what I was talking about. These hidden prohibitions of did you notice how even Iran, you remember, somebody told me that in a way similar to how Netanyahu maybe provoked this war to save himself from prison. It was, I have friends in Iran who are in this medium state, half arrested, half not, and they told me that it's crucial to remember that before these tensions bombing with Israel and United States in Iran, there was that Kurdish woman killed, Mahsa Amini, and so on, and the regime was almost on the edge. And that the general theory there is that they consciously went into this tension with Israel and so on to mobilize the people, to keep themselves in power, and so on and so on. So we have precisely in sympathy with full sympathy to many Muslims. I love their philosophy. For example, Sufism, okay, but every snobbish intellectual likes Sufism mystics. It is crucial, because for me, you are really solidary with somebody only if you also speak to him honestly and criticize him. Beware of friends who don't criticize you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
If you can give in more question, not so much remark, more question, maybe we take few of them. I just want to say that the way nobody tried to romanticize Islam or something like that. You remember, Slavoj, when you were younger, you said it's very nice about anti-Semitism. You said that even everything they said about the Jew is right, it's still anti-Semitism. And it's very important. The issue is not if Islam is better or not. We are not in any theological conversation. It's about how Europe treats the Muslims. This is the question. Not, of course, the bad Muslim, bad good Muslim, Jews, whatever. And in Syria, it was very hard because, I really feel my responsibility is to fight for Palestine, and I know really they're better, and the genocide is really happened there. But it was very sad for me to see the Palestinian community in the war split to two. There were the communists, so that are more for Assad, and Tajam Mubarak was more for the other, and then they said no, we are for human rights. And somebody wrote, I think it was from the Intifada, that you wrote, maybe we are too weak to take a part there when we have our people, refugees in Syria, that each time somebody else come to our camp and kill us. And sometimes, how the West is handling it, it's totally how it's functioned for their good. How the people in Palestine acting to it is the weak people that try to survive. They are not always on the right side. And there were people there that was on the right side also, and the fight within the movement of the Palestinian movement.
Yeah, but
I felt that I don't know enough, and it's clear on specific thing that we had to fight Assad, and it was clear that we have to fight the other, and it's clear that the Kurds it's easier to support. But those are things that we all know. But it's very, I don't like that Slavoj like to bring some bad stories about Muslims. Of course, there are many bad stories about Muslims. And yes, in England, some Muslims did rapes. Yes, Slavoj, I know all your stories. The question is how the West treat it.
No.
And the West treat it extremely different. The West treat the Muslim now the way you, anti-Semitic Europe, used to treat Jews in the 30s. Like everything that happened for Muslims, it's become all over against Muslims. And that's what I'm fighting. I'm not trying to idolize any group. The other that you chose now in Europe is the Muslim. The demonstration is against the Muslims. The language Islam take over Europe, this is the language now. And that's the language we fight, not specific stories that this one did this or this one that. No, I don't speak about what's happened. I speak about Europe. About what's happened there, it's terrible. No, don't misunderstand.
Yeah, but nonetheless,
it's
now
it's
I will
about
be
the relation
of being,
here.
As I'm
But let's other people a bit. I will let you, but it's not.
So,
she's with the mic.
Yes, I've been holding the mic for a while now, so thank you. So actually, what I want to ask is related to again another Syrian woman living in exile, and I would like to ask a question beyond identities and beyond being a Muslim or a Jew and beyond only the specificities of what's happening in the Middle East. I would like to ask about this universality and how it actually translates, because you both have talked about class issues, but not in a very explicit way. You've talked about the movements and how it basically adapts a political correctness or woke language, and that does not necessarily take into consideration the actual class struggle that is happening all over the world. I would just like to ask the question how the situation in Palestine and in many places, in many other places in the world, how this translates or how this connects to other class-related issues, and if this is really about identities or if it's about capital and about the capital disaster complex that basically started in the 80s with the rise of neoliberal corporatism and basically making capital out of war.
You can answer longer. I will be very short. You know what is absolutely crucial in this case? Don't play the game. Israel is the instrument of big corporations against poor Palestinians. What about Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and so on? How many Palestinians do they accept? I often think that this formal condemnation of Israel, you know, all Arab states now talk, where is the act? You remember the last group that tried to enter Gaza through Sinai? Egypt arrested 3,000 people and threw them out and so on. So if you talk with class struggle, don't focus just on bad Israel. Go also to Arab countries, how divided they are. The saddest paradox for me is that, you know what Saudi Arabia is doing, because many desperate Muslims from East Africa try to cross that Red Sea, whatever, go to Yemen and then up. And I read a report on what is Saudi Arabia doing this. It fortified the border. Drones, planes, guns, bombing them, and so on. Where is that? Why don't we read more about this?
Well, Slavoj, I don't know. She raised a good question. How we, as people that are Marxist already, how we see the situation from a class struggle. She doesn't try to say that class struggle has immediately to analyze to this, but I spoke a lot about identity, and I didn't speak about class struggle, and I think it's a good remark.
Yeah. And I'm ready to say as Israel even.
For me, I want to answer, I mean, for me, because one of the person that influenced me most is Walter Benjamin, and I really think that he dealt very strongly in the relationship of class struggle and theology. And for me, like, who is really running out? Also, when I think about America and Israel, I never know who is playing what. Is America is just playing Israel as their biggest base in the Middle East to protect their interests in oil and all that, or Israel is really such a manipulative group that control America? And before it was clear to me that it's America controlling Israel. Now I got already confused, but I think it's very important. The reason I choose in Germany more the identity discourse and not the class discourse when I speak here in Germany, because I'm coming as a warrior, and right now there is a genocide. And I think that what I can add to the German discourse is deconstruct all this bullshit about we're doing it for the Jew. And therefore, I said before, I don't need the Jew. It's enough to be a Marxist or a human to fight against genocide. It's clear, and that's why I spoke about Microsoft, how they put $20 billion there, and the control. But I feel that my role in Germany right now, because many Palestinian comrades are getting beaten on the street, and everyone who just opened their mouth called them anti-Semitic, with me, that all my life is about was researching my Jewishness. Nobody can use it against me, and I feel that that's the way I can be instrumental best here. That's why I'm putting more the energy on that here.